was such an open road and leading towards the sunset. It was all still glowing. I thought it was such a glorious moment.
I was very excited when you suggested that we might discuss this photograph, The Road to Emmaus, because when we launched our project, which looks at the Bible in the company of visual art, the Emmaus story was one of the things that most fascinated us at the beginning, partly because there's so much in the story about seeing and also not seeing and vanishing. So I wondered why you were drawn to this subject. Did you simply find that you were on this road and wanted to photograph it, or did you go and look for it?
Well, I certainly didn't know there was a road. I didn't even know where Emmaus is, and there are several theories. 3 or 4 places claim to be the old biblical place called Emmaus. I went to all the places that are somehow marked and either found too many tourist buses or too many tourists, period. I don't know. I was disappointed with my mission. And one of the last days, I found one place that was scary. Wow, scary. It was the place where Judas Iscariot was buried. Or the place that he bought with the 30 silver.
Yes, the Potter's Field.
Yeah, the Potter's Field. Hakebana, it's in Hebrew. I found the Potter's Field.
Wow.
Took photographs of the Potter's Field. It's about the scariest place I've ever photographed. Everywhere there's trees in Jerusalem, and this is of course in the occupied zone. So, and everywhere there's birds, but in this place, this only place that I found, there was not a single bird. It was dead silent, and it was the scariest, cursed place I've ever met. It was used basically as a dumping ground for all sorts of old refrigerators and God knows stuff. But the absence of any living thing was scary. And I took photographs, and it was so creepy. And I was there by foot. I was so happy when I walked away from it again. And then I thought, this can be it. This can be the end of my effort to photograph biblical places, this horror place. And then I made one last effort, and that was the road to Emmaus. So I went to all the places that claimed to be Emmaus, but then again, Emmaus didn't really matter. The road to Emmaus, what I was after. And all the places that claimed to have been Emmaus were in the west, or west of Jerusalem, west-northwest. So Emmaus sort of was between Jerusalem and the ocean. Closer to Jerusalem, obviously. And so I went to a monastery again called Emmaus, which was still on the map, but it was a ruin. The monks, they had left about 100 years ago. It was just sheer ruins. So that was my last hope. And then I went back towards Jerusalem, and it was already afternoon.
The right time of day.
Yeah, and
for reenacting this journey. Yeah.
Exactly. It happened to become the right time of day, and I figured if they had left Jerusalem and had gone west, northwest, I should just go to find a road. So I went zigzag, and I had a 4-wheel drive vehicle, and eventually I gave it up. And I parked my car, and I crossed, and I went north, because I figured I would have to somehow at one point cross something that must have been a road, because there must have been a road from Jerusalem west. So I got out and walked. And I still walked north, because that my chance to cross an east-west road was big. And it was getting dark, and I was scary. I couldn't find my car anymore, so there was a hill in front of me, and I said, that's the last one. I just climbed that one, and then I have an overview, and then I go back to the car. And when I got to the top of the hill, I saw, right on top, I saw a stone that looked like a like it had been a marker.
Like a milestone or something.
Like a milestone. No writing on it, but it looked like it wasn't just all natural. And I followed a little bit from there west, and then there were other stones like that. Until all of a sudden there was a piece of road. There was a piece of road that had cobbles. And not only cobbles, it had, you can see that hundreds and hundreds of horse carriages must have gone there because it had these hollowed lines. You see them there a little bit.
Yeah.
And there was all these milestones left and right, and there was something that must have been a very, very old road, but now it was away from everything. There was no place, no village, no house for miles and miles around. It was just a remnant of a Roman road. And I walked it, whatever I find, until I found this piece that was the most distinct. And by then the sun was setting, and I was really in the right light. I figured, because they were happy to get to wherever Emmaus was, and they were going to take a rest, and they were tired, and they were desperate, and they were sad, until this guy who they had met on the road was able to explain to them that everything that had happened in Jerusalem had been foreseen and was predicted by prophets, and everything had to happen. Sun was setting, and they were going to get to that roadhouse, whatever it was, where they were going to have dinner. And then he sat down with them and broke the bread, and then they realized. So that is a great story, because it is a story of faith and to be on the road.
Is that why it's one of your favourite stories?
It is a real road movie.
It's a road movie in the Bible.
It's one of the real stories that happens on the road. There's a few of them, but this is my favorite.
Yeah.
Because it's a double road. They walk there defeated, and then they run back jubilant.
Yes. And I wondered if it had a feeling in the way that the place of Judas's death had a feeling, a creepy feeling. Did this have a particular feeling?
It was such an open road and leading towards the sunset. And these old stones, they seemed to be glowing. The sun was already down when I took the picture, and it was all still glowing. And it was so, I felt it was such a glorious moment. The age of these stones and the age of the landscape, and the fact that it had been altogether abandoned and forgotten. I was in no man's land, but there was a road. And I figured I was walking the road to Emmaus, and then I ran back just as happy as these guys.
You did, and you had your own epiphany of a different sort, but on this same road.
Can't prove it, but it had, in my heart, I had been on that road.
Does the role of the vanishing of Jesus play a part for you in what you explore with these empty landscapes? This doesn't feel to me a place without presence. It feels full of some kind of presence, but not the bodies of humans, directly, literally speaking. But how does that work?
But that's the whole story of our faith, is that believe in something we can't see, but that created everything that we see. God created everything we can see, but we can see Him. In Christ we can see Him. Paul said that in Colossians or something. In Christ we can see God. But in nature we can if we want, but it's also His absence. It's His presence is in that road, and is in the sun and in the light and in those stones. I very much believe that God shows His presence in everything. Certainly in people, but also in every living thing. And also in rocks. I believe in rocks.
Well, the rocks can praise. As the Bible describes the rocks doing their own kind of praise.
Oh, yes. I collect rocks. I didn't dare taking a piece of that road with me. I took rocks from other places, also from my journey in the Holy Land, but I didn't take a single piece of that. I felt I didn't have the right. I had discovered it and I had taken a picture, and I was glad that the road let me take the picture and that it showed itself in such glorious light. And then I went back and always looked over my shoulder. And of course it is a story about absence and presence.
Yeah. Do you feel also that time, this is again, just as in your description of Judas's place of death, and here, that time, it has a sort of transparency. So the past is still lurking or speaking through what's here. Is that something that informs a lot of the way you see things, whether in photography or in film, this way that time is almost kind of a palimpsest?
Yeah, we all got so much used to the idea that time is described in history. And we take our human history for time itself.
Yeah.
But then again, it's only a tiny little fragment. And some of these landscapes, this landscape is billions and millions of years older than any of our idea of time. And these stones are already there. They were already there when the Roman carriages went through. They've seen us, they've seen history. I believe that time is also stored in places, and that places have an elephant's memory, and rocks especially.
Yeah.
They have a great memory, and they have seen it all, and it's sort of arrogant on our behalf to claim history for ourselves, or knowledge of time. These rocks know so much more, and that road knew so much more about time. And for these rocks and that road, it was a second after Cleopas.
Yes,
was one of the
two disciples.
Or
Yes.
it was called Cleopas, the other we don't know. And then they met the unknown traveler, who then revealed himself to them when he broke the bread. And so I felt their presence was still there, because the place had seen him, and the place doesn't forget. Places do not forget. That's why I love to photograph places, because every now and then they give you a hint of the memory they've stored. And I felt in that picture that road had revealed some of its sense of time and some of the presence of things it had seen. And this is one of that's why it's my favorite picture. It's the most condensed time I've ever been able to grasp in a photograph. I mean, I've taken pictures of craters and deserts and seas and God knows what. And it's all about the time that is revealed in a place and its sense of time. And that's why I take pictures of places, only because as soon as there's a person, then we want to know who's that person and what is that person doing there, and what can that person tell us. Well, I think it's pretty much more informative to find out what the place can tell us.
Yes.
But you have to take your time.
You've talked about your faith in the fact that we are looked at by God as by a loving eye. And I wonder whether you think your directorial lens or your photographer's lens is in some way an analogy for that. Do you seek to be a loving eye when you make these works?
I have no other way. I'm not a critical eye. People always, not always, but sometimes reproach that my look isn't critical enough. When I made a film on the Pope, I said, but you could have been so much.
I've watched it, by the way. Yes,
you could have been so much more critical. For some reason, we are so opinion hungry these days, and I'm not all that much opinionated. I like to places reveal themselves, and people show who they are. And I don't want to put them down. If they don't do it in their own words, I'm not gonna make them look like caricature, or I don't know. I think a loving look has many advantages and opens up other facets than any critical look can possibly open. But the critical look, especially in documentaries, is very overrated and in many ways is seen as the only possible look for looking at the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I disagree. I think a loving look goes much deeper. And if there is anything to say critically, you'll see it anyway. The loving look does see that. But it doesn't put it into words.